My name is Marcus Whitfield, and I'm 32 years old, living in Portland, Oregon. I work as a software engineer at a tech startup, spending most of my days buried in code and debugging systems that seem to break faster than I can fix them. Portland suits me with its endless coffee shops, misty mornings, and the kind of anonymity a city provides when you need to disappear from your past. But today, I can't hide anymore. Today, I received a phone call that shattered the carefully constructed wall I'd built around my memories. The call came from my younger sister, Emma, her voice trembling through the phone speaker as rain pelted my apartment window. "Marcus," she whispered, "you need to come home. It's about Dad and what he did to Grandma Rose." I hadn't spoken to my family in 3 years. Not since the incident that tore us apart. Not since I discovered the truth about who my father really was. But hearing Emma's voice, hearing the pain that mirrored my own, I knew I had to go back to Millbrook, the small town in upstate New York where I grew up, where my grandmother raised me with more love than my own parents ever showed. The drive from Portland to Millbrook took 2 days. 2 days of memories flooding back. 2 days of preparing myself to face the man I once called father. 2 days of wondering if Grandma Rose was still the same woman who used to make me chocolate chip cookies every Sunday and tell me stories about her youth during the Great Depression. Millbrook hadn't changed much. The same tree-lined streets, the same old Victorian houses with their wraparound porches, the same sense that time moved slower here than anywhere else in the world. But as I pulled into the driveway of my childhood home, everything felt different. Smaller somehow, as if the house had shrunk under the weight of secrets. Emma was waiting for me on the front steps. At 28, she looked older than I remembered. Her auburn hair pulled back in a messy bun, dark circles under her green eyes. She hugged me tightly, and I could feel her shaking. "I'm so glad you came," she said. "I didn't know who else to call." "Where's Dad?" I asked, though part of me hoped he wasn't here. "At the office. He doesn't know I called you." Emma looked around nervously. "Marcus, there's something you need to see, something I found in his desk." She led me inside, past the familiar living room with its floral wallpaper and the piano I used to practice on every afternoon after school. We went upstairs to Dad's study, a room that had always been off limits when we were kids. Emma opened the desk drawer and pulled out a manila folder thick with documents. "Look at this," she said, her hands trembling as she opened the folder. Inside were bank statements, legal documents, and correspondence between my father and various financial institutions. But what caught my attention immediately was a letter from Grandma Rose's doctor, dated 6 months ago, stating that she had been diagnosed with early-stage dementia and was no longer capable of making major financial decisions. "Emma, what is this?" I asked, though a cold dread was already settling in my stomach. She pulled out another document, a power of attorney form signed by Grandma Rose, giving Dad complete control over her finances. The signature looked shaky, uncertain, nothing like the bold handwriting I remembered from her birthday cards. "There's more," Emma said quietly. She showed me bank statements from Grandma Rose's account. Over the past year, there had been regular transfers of large amounts of money. $50,000 in January, $30,000 in March, another $40,000 just last month, all transferred to Dad's personal account. "Marcus, she's been living on almost nothing," Emma continued, tears starting to fall. "I went to visit her last week at the nursing home, and she's wearing the same 3 outfits over and over. She asked me why no one visits her anymore, why she can't afford the physical therapy the doctor recommended. She doesn't understand what happened to her money." "The nursing home?" I interrupted. "What nursing home?" "Grandma Rose always said she'd never leave her house." Emma's face crumpled. "Dad moved her there 8 months ago, said it was for her own safety, that she couldn't take care of herself anymore. But Marcus, I think he just wanted access to her house. He's been showing it to real estate agents." The room started spinning. My grandmother, the woman who had been more of a parent to me than my actual parents, was sitting in some nursing home while my father systematically stole her life savings. The woman who had worked 3 jobs during the Depression to keep her family afloat, who had saved every penny for 60 years, was now penniless because her own son had betrayed her trust. "Where is she?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Sunset Manor, about 20 minutes from here. Emma wiped her eyes. Marcus, I tried talking to Dad about it, but he just said, I don't understand finances, that he's doing what's best for her. He made me feel like I was crazy for questioning him. I stood up, pacing the small study. How long has this been going on? I think it started right after her diagnosis, maybe even before. She handed me another document. Look at this. It was a receipt for a luxury cruise to the Caribbean. $15,000, charged to Dad's credit card just 2 weeks after he'd transferred $30,000 from Grandma Rose's account. He's been using her money to fund his lifestyle, I said, the pieces falling into place. All those business trips he's been taking, the new car, the renovations to this house, it's all been paid for with Grandma's savings. Emma nodded miserably. What do we do, Marcus? I can't just sit here and watch him destroy her. I looked at my sister, seeing the same sense of helplessness I'd felt 3 years ago when I'd first started questioning our father's character. But this time was different. This time, I wasn't going to run away. We're going to stop him, I said firmly, and we're going to make sure Grandma Rose gets the care and respect she deserves. The next morning, I drove to Sunset Manor. The facility was clean but sterile, with the kind of institutional smell that no amount of air freshener could mask. I found Grandma Rose in the common room, sitting by herself near a window, staring out at a small garden. She looked so much smaller than I remembered. Her silver hair, once always perfectly styled, was thin and unkempt. She wore a faded blue sweater that I recognized from my childhood, and her hands, once strong from years of gardening and cooking, looked fragile and spotted with age. "Grandma Rose?" I said softly, sitting down beside her. She turned to look at me, and for a moment there was no recognition in her eyes. Then slowly a smile spread across her face. "Marcus, is that really you?" Her voice was weaker than I remembered, but still warm. "Oh, my dear boy, I've missed you so much." "I've missed you too, Grandma." I took her hand, feeling how cold it was. "How are you doing here?" Her smile faltered. "I don't understand why I'm here, Marcus. Your father said it was temporary, that I just needed to get better. But I feel fine. I want to go home to my garden. The roses need tending, and I haven't finished the quilt I was making for Emma's wedding." "Emma's not getting married, Grandma," I said gently. She looked confused. "Isn't she?" I could have sworn she told me about a young man. Her eyes grew distant. Sometimes I can't remember things the way I used to. We talked for an hour, and in that time I saw flashes of the woman who had raised me. She remembered teaching me to bake bread. Githip remembered the stories she used to tell me about her parents' immigration from Ireland, remembered the day I graduated from college, and how proud she was. But she also forgot things mid-sentence, repeated questions she'd already asked, and kept talking about people who had been dead for years, as if they were still alive. When I finally left, promising to visit again soon, I was filled with a rage so pure it surprised me. My father had taken advantage of this sweet, confused woman who had given everything to her family. He had isolated her, stolen from her, and left her to waste away in this place while he lived comfortably off her money. That evening, I confronted him. Dad was in his study when I walked in without knocking. He looked up from his computer, surprised to see me. "Marcus." He stood up, attempting a smile. "Emma said you were in town. It's good to see you, son." "Don't call me son," I said, placing the folder of documents on his desk. "We need to talk about Grandma Rose." His face went pale, but he tried to maintain his composure. "What about her?" I opened the folder and spread the bank statements across his desk. "About the $120,000 you've stolen from her over the past year." He sat down heavily. "Marcus, you don't understand the situation. Your grandmother needed care, and that care is expensive. I've been managing her finances to ensure she gets the best possible treatment. By transferring her money into your personal account, I picked up the cruise receipt. By taking luxury vacations with her savings, that cruise was a business expense," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Dad, I've seen her. She's wearing the same clothes every day because she can't afford new ones. She's asking why no one visits her, why she can't afford physical therapy. Meanwhile, you're living it up on her dime." He stood up, his face reddening. "How dare you come into my house and accuse me of stealing? Everything I've done has been for her benefit." You don't know what it's like to be responsible for an elderly person with dementia. Then why didn't you ask Emma or me for help? Why didn't you discuss these decisions with the family? Because you ran off to Oregon 3 years ago and never looked back. He shouted, and Emma is too young to understand these kinds of responsibilities. I'm back now, I said quietly, and I'm going to make sure this stops. Over the next week, I threw myself into research. I contacted elder law attorneys, learned about financial abuse of the elderly, and discovered that what my father had done was not just morally wrong, but criminally illegal. I gathered evidence, organized documents, and prepared to file a complaint with Adult Protective Services. But first, I wanted to give him one more chance to do the right thing. I met him at his office, a small insurance agency he'd run for 20 years. He looked tired, older than his 58 years, and I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Dad, I said, sitting across from his desk, I'm going to report you for elder financial abuse unless you agree to return every penny you've taken from Grandma Rose and transfer her care to someone who actually has her best interests at heart. He stared at me for a long moment. Marcus, you don't understand the pressure I've been under. Business has been slow. Your mother's medical bills from her cancer treatment last year nearly bankrupted us, and Emma's college loans are still being paid off. I didn't plan for this to happen. So you decided to steal from your own mother? I was going to pay it back, he said weakly. Once business picked up, once we got back on our feet. When, Dad? When she's dead? When there's nothing left to pay back? He put his head in his hands. I never meant for it to go this far. But it did go this far. And now you need to fix it. He looked up at me, and for the first time in years, I saw vulnerability in his eyes. What do you want me to do? First, you're going to return every dollar you took from her account. Second, you're going to sign over power of attorney to me. Third, you're going to pay for her to receive the best possible care, including the physical therapy she needs. And fourth, you're going to visit her every week and explain to her as gently as possible why she can't go home. And if I don't, then I file the complaint tomorrow and you'll be facing criminal charges for elder abuse. Your business will be ruined, your reputation destroyed, and you'll likely spend time in prison. He was quiet for a long time, staring out the window at the quiet street outside his office. Finally, he nodded. Okay, he said quietly. I'll do it. But Marcus, I need time to liquidate some assets to get the money back. You have 30 days, I said. And Dad, if you ever take advantage of her again, if you ever put your financial problems before her well-being, I will destroy you. The process of restoring Grandma Rose's finances and improving her care took several months. I took a leave of absence from my job in Portland and stayed in Millbrook to oversee everything. We found her a better facility, one with beautiful gardens and activities designed for people with dementia. We hired a private aide to ensure she received individual attention. We even brought some of her furniture and personal belongings to make her room feel more like home. Most importantly, we made sure she was never alone. Emma and I visited several times a week, and even Dad kept his promise to visit regularly. Slowly, Grandma Rose began to seem more like herself. She was eating better, participating in activities, and while her memory continued to decline, she seemed happier and more comfortable. One afternoon, about 6 months after I'd returned to Millbrook, I was sitting with Grandma Rose in the facility's garden. She was working on a small needlepoint project, her fingers moving slowly but steadily. Marcus, she said suddenly, looking up at me with clear eyes, I want to thank you. For what, Grandma? For taking care of me. I know I get confused sometimes, and I know I can't remember things the way I used to. But I always remember that you love me, and that makes everything else bearable. I felt tears welling up in my eyes. I love you too, Grandma, more than you'll ever know. She patted my hand with her soft, wrinkled fingers. You're a good boy, Marcus. Your parents raised you right. I didn't correct her. In that moment, it didn't matter who had raised me or what mistakes had been made. What mattered was that she felt loved and cared for, that her final years would be filled with dignity and respect, rather than neglect and exploitation. As I write this story, Grandma Rose is still with us, though her condition continues to deteriorate. She doesn't always remember my name now, but she still smiles when I walk into her room, still holds my hand when we sit together in the garden. My father kept his word about the money and the visits, though our relationship will never be the same. Emma has become Grandma Rose's fiercest advocate, ensuring that every aspect of her care meets the highest standards. I eventually returned to Portland, but I come back to Millbrook every month to visit. I've learned that family isn't just about blood relations or childhood memories. It's about showing up when someone needs you, about protecting those who can't protect themselves, about doing what's right even when it's difficult or painful. The story I've told you isn't just about financial abuse or family betrayal. It's about the choices we make when faced with moral challenges, about the responsibility we have to care for our elders, and about the power of love to overcome even the deepest wounds. My grandmother may not remember all the details of what happened, but she knows she is loved, and in the end, that's what matters most. If you're listening to this story and you know someone who might be experiencing elder abuse, please don't stay silent. Speak up, ask questions, and get help. Our elderly deserve better than to be forgotten or exploited by the very people who should be protecting them. They deserve dignity, respect, and love in their final years, just as they gave us love when we needed it most.